Had to pull up a little bit on that one too. I was thinking after last week I had it solved, but not quite yet. There's a little bit of a twinge in there. I said a couple of weeks ago that we had things under control as far as the diaphragm is concerned. Still think we do. Think that's all right. It's just the throat. Not real sure if I'm just maybe doing this too late in the day or what might be going on there. But that greeting thing there, maybe I just need to change that up. Maybe that's a sign from the gods, from my own body or whatever, that I just need to do something other than yelling greetings in your ear whenever I start one of these new episodes. How you doing, folks? Time for another episode of this here program. Come on in, turn it up. It's the Weekly Trim with yours, Beardly, the one and only Redbeard. Or at least the only guy who calls himself Redbeard in the next 10 square miles or so. How you doing, everybody? Glad to have you back here for another episode of the program. Appreciate y'all for tuning in and being a part not only of what we're doing here on the Rasslin Redbeard YouTube channel, but also through all of our affiliate partners we have now through our association with Anchor.fm. We're on Spotify, Google podcasts, a number of other platforms here now, all thanks to being associated with Anchor.fm. So give them a shout there. Tune in to lots of cool podcasts on that platform. Again, we wanted to take that route because of the fact that we know, this is YouTube. YouTube gets blocked in a lot of scenarios. So Anchor.fm and those other audio-only scenarios are a bit more encouraging for people who, they might be at work, might be wherever, might not necessarily be able to get access to YouTube. Or you just might not want to use YouTube for a audio-based program like ours. So, we always have used YouTube for distributing these programs because of the fact that we already had the YouTube channel. We were already using it for a lot of stuff. So it just made sense to continue putting these things out there on the YouTube channel, even though it's audio. But, through Anchor, we've got a great thing going there. Really want to continue to encourage people to listen via that avenue as well if you have an opportunity. Cool site. Lots of good programs out there on Anchor.fm. So tune in not only to our program, but also browse around. There's tons of everything you could imagine in terms of topics for podcasts are out there. Everything from like if you want to have comic book discussion or professional wrestling or recipes, everything in between. It's all out there. If you can find anything related to podcasts, because so many people just want to share what their opinions are. They want to get out there and create programs like this. Because I'll say, this is my perspective. Audio, to me, is a whole hell of a lot easier to work with than video. Video gets messy real quick, especially these days because, with audio, you can create layers and all this kind of fancy stuff in your editing software, and it's not that, difficult because there's a lot of stock elements you could work with out there if you know where to find them online. But like with video, oh man, I wish I had the training to do all the kind of cool stuff you see on a lot of these YouTube channels. It's like, where did you guys come up with all this? Did you just have a graphics design engineering, whatever degree? Did you went to Full Sail University and learned how to do all this stuff with Adobe Premiere and whatever else you're working with? It just it blows me away what some people are able to accomplish with these editing programs at home anymore, because Lord knows, even being involved in IT and computer science, I was around when, these sort of things were in their very, very, very crude infancy. So not a whole lot of that was even mentioned whenever I was in school and what have you. But, if I had it to do over again, I probably would have studied some of that stuff because it's very cool, very interesting, very useful. And now, if I want something done as far as like an animation or a graphic or whatever, I can make a graphic so long as it's a static image. That's fine. But if it wants to be something cool where it's moving or whatever, I gotta pay somebody or ask for a favor and be like, can you do this for me? My YouTube channel sucks. I need a favor. And I got a few friends who can do that kind of thing. But still, if I had it to do over again, I would definitely have studied something along those lines. It's just a very interesting and very cool thing to do. That's there's two things in my present life that I really wish I had studied at some point. And the stuff along those lines, editing, multimedia, that kind of thing is one of them. Another one is a foreign language. I studied French. I admit wholeheartedly to having made the mistake of following a girl into a French course when I was in high school. And that was pretty much the whole reason why I took French. Because a girl I liked was taking French. I'm like, all right, well, this will be the opportunity for me to follow her around and whatnot. And it was a terrible idea because, for one, not only was it a fruitless endeavor, I'll go ahead and say, but it was also a language that was ultimately useless. And I hate to say that. Pardon all of our French fans out there. Yeah, all right, but it's not a language that internationally is utilized all that much. So in hindsight, definitely would have taken Spanish. I would love to be able to speak and understand Spanish in more than just a very basic sense what I do now. I shouldn't even say a basic sense, because if you say more than hola and a couple of things that are on the menu at the Mexican restaurants, it's beyond my head. Burrito, yeah, chimichanga, I know those words. Anything else? Don't ask me to be conversational. Good Lord, no, that wouldn't work. But yeah, I definitely would have liked to have studied a more prolific foreign language, something that would have been useful in day-to-day operations. So that's two things that I do regret. But I'll tell you what, this has been kind of a weird year. It's been more than weird in a lot of ways. And, this is getting seemingly weirder. The craziness of 2020, it just continues. And in a lot of different ways here, because, we've had the pandemic, we've had the shutdown, I've been through my own personal things here where I had my surgery, I had to recover from that. Still, I'm fully recovered, but I still have some things that I'm dealing with and whatnot. And some ramifications of it, because with an injury like that, you can't really return to doing things like picking up heavy objects and what have you, because the conditions of your abdomen are such that you've got in my case, I've got a big piece of surgical mesh holding my abdomen together, and if I were to do something in the wrong way, yeah, I don't want to do anything to risk pulling that apart, or Lord knows getting a second hernia somewhere else along my abdominal wall there. But the craziness just continues, and there was a big example of that last weekend. I've told you guys before about how I record the show a day or so in advance because it allows me to edit and to get everything together so I can put a little bit of spit shine on the whole thing. But last weekend, as we were, kind of getting done with the recording process on this thing, we had an earthquake here in the Carolinas. An earthquake. I got up, I think it was Sunday morning, I got up and started just doing my usual thing, flipping through Facebook, kind of trying to catch up on the news of the day, and started seeing friends of mine talk about, was that an earthquake? Did you feel the ground move? Did you sense this thing? And the more and more I started to read these posts, I was like, well, gosh, some of these are pretty close to where we are. And I didn't feel a thing. I felt left out. I was like, well shit. I wanted to feel an earthquake. Not, I don't want like some magnitude 9 thing, like you see in the movies where it, cracks the earth in half and this kind of thing. But a little rumble, that'd be kind of cool. I felt one in my life. One. And it was, I will never forget it, because I was working for my previous employer in Orangeburg, South Carolina, And I started to feel, and the building we were in was a 4-story building. So for starters, you're already in something that's going to sort of feel that quake through the rickets and whatnot that were used in building a structure like that. But my office was on the 3rd floor of this 4-story building. Technically, it's a 5-story building if you count the basement, but the basement's below ground, so we're not going to count that. But at any rate, we're on the 3rd floor there, and I start feeling like a little shimmy. I'm like, well, what is that? So I was in my office chair there, and in my chair, it was stable enough to where if I grabbed the armrests, I could pick my feet up off the ground, and it had, that little base, how the base can kind of like tilt a little bit from side to side when you're in an office chair. I felt it moving back and forth because I was able to balance myself, but I felt it shaking. And I'm like, that's an earthquake. And it was. It was a very small earthquake, but that's the only one that I remember feeling. This one didn't feel a thing, but people around where we are, within, like 10 miles of where I happen to be living now, people claim to have felt the thing. So, it was like, well, I guess we just got left out of that one. But it was just a crazy thing because the epicenter was somewhere up around, I forget the name of the town. It was some small town in North Carolina up near the Virginia border. And it was a 5.1. And for it to be felt all the way down here into the Midlands, sort of almost beyond the Midlands of South Carolina, that's a pretty good little quake there. To be, especially an area like ours, which, if you're not familiar, there is a major fault line that runs through South Carolina all the way down through Charleston. People have, been, this is one of those things where you hate to think about it, given our present situation where anything and everything seemingly is bound to happen. But geologists and people who research this kind of thing have said for years, for a very long time, that Charleston's due, that we're due for something of this nature, and for it to be fairly significant because of the nature of the fault line. So when this thing went off, I was like, oh gosh, please don't let this be the precursor to whatever they've been talking about forever in terms of it being, quote unquote, the big one that comes through South Carolina. But, it was ultimately not a bad one. I don't know that there's been any reported damage from this thing. Might be a little bit of cracked concrete here and there, but whatever. It was just one of those cool things where you would have liked to have felt it if at all possible. I didn't, so whatever. Weather, we're talking about stuff of the act of God type things. So weather, we had Hurricane Isaias. People butchered this thing. I I think the worst one was, again, we're talking about Governor Foghorn Leghorn here in the state of South Carolina. Governor Henry McMaster, which if you doubt the way I changed my already thick Southern accent to reflect the way this man talks, trust me, look up some video of him giving speeches and whatnot. You'll find very quickly that this is the way he talks. He has a very pronounced Charlestonian Southern accent because of the fact that's where he's from. And that's just the way he sounds, like Foghorn Leghorn, really and truly. But, that's him. He's an old white dude from Charleston, South Carolina. That's the way he's going to sound. At any rate, he butchered the name Isaias. I think he called it ISIS. So he gave them a free plug. Whatever. He's not going to get it right anyway. But we had Hurricane Isaias come through here. Not really come through here. It skirted the coast. It didn't really get near here all that much, but it seemed to kind of start churning the weather that we're known for this time of year, which when we get into July and August in this state, we have a weather pattern that really resembles that of Central Florida, in that you have a lot of humidity. You have often thunderstorms and rain showers. Like today, for example, the day I'm recording this, we have had 3 thunderstorms come through on separate occasions, because you'll have a thunderstorm or just rain and then a period of sunshine, then a thunderstorm, then sunshine, then a thunderstorm. It's very weird, but it's what we deal with. We had a power outage here within the past 24 hours, which is by no stretch of the imagination a unordinary thing where we live, because our power grid here seems to be affected by such things as gusts of wind and fat pigeons sitting on the cables. But that's neither here nor there. It's been an interesting thing, weather related here in this year as well. It's constant thunderstorms, a little bit more usual, a little bit more regular than I should say than we've had in years past. And now there's been, and I think this might have been one of those things where if you follow a farmer's almanac, might have been in the farmer's almanac, because there's been people now talking about the fact that a cold front is coming and that we could have an early fall. As in within the next couple of weeks, it could start to turn relatively cold. Not like, sub-zero temperatures, but cooler, as in 20 degrees cooler than normal. I would love that. Please. I've seen some people say, oh, no, I want my summer still around here. No. Cold. Now. Please. I like colder weather. I don't, I'm not going to sit here and say that I am familiar with snow and ice and all this, that, and the other, but I very much appreciate colder weather, because guess what? It means no bugs. It means you can walk around outside and not sweat immediately, because the humidity is not 9,000% like it is here a majority of the year. It's just a nicer time of year. Fall is just a nicer time of year, period. And I'm not going to say anything about pumpkin spice. I hate pumpkin spice. Screw pumpkin spice. It's not about that. It's just about being comfortable. I'm a type of person who, if you walk outside right now, and it's like walking into a bucket of hot water. I hate that sweaty, musty feeling that you get every time you go outside this time of year. I would love to spend more time outside, but you just can't, because this part of the world as well is very well known for things like gnats and flies. Why we have them here, I have no idea, but we do. And just being very uncomfortable. So it is what it is. I would very much appreciate the notion that we could be getting a cold front, and it would be something protracted that would go into triggering an early fall. That'd be ideal for me. Some people like to be tortured though, so they'd sooner have it be hot. And the other weird thing that's cropped up here, this was just a story that, it's not true in terms of the perception that was created here, but it's something that got some traction online, so I'll go ahead and mention it because it's kind of funny, and it's something that, in my time alone here on the weekends, I've gotten back into watching movies, specifically some horror movies. And some of the movies are from the Conjuring universe, which followed the exploits of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who were two real-life paranormal investigators. Ed, there were a couple, a married couple. Ed was a demonologist, very involved in research and collecting artifacts that had been in some way, shape, or form affected by demonic possession. Lorraine was a clairvoyant in terms of being able to evidently reach out into the paranormal and commune with spirits and other things of the spiritual realm there. So a very unique combination of people, very well known in terms of their participation in lots of investigations involving paranormal scenarios and situations. They, of course, have been the part of at least two movies there in terms of the Conjuring films. And I haven't seen the movie about this thing, but I know there's at least one movie about a doll named Annabelle. It is an actual doll that was owned apparently by some young women who, I'm going to butcher the story here, but I believe the young women who owned this thing did a seance or something with it in close proximity to it. There were, again, it's one of those things where it sounds like a movie plot anyway. Or we were screwing around with the Ouija board and we decided to talk to Satan, and then we got a possessed doll. What are we going to do? And that just, it sounds like the plot for a movie. And of course, it's become the plot for a movie because there are movies based on this Annabelle doll. But supposedly, this doll became actually possessed by a demon that was pretending to be a little girl. Because at first they thought, because they were in some way able to communicate with this thing, the people who owned it originally. They were able to, in some way communicate with it. And then it became a situation to where they saw it move. And it became violent. As in, there were some injuries, and I think there might have been a death associated or attributed to this thing. I don't know. I can't get into the full details of it because I haven't done that much in terms of actual research on it. But the rumor started going around the internet, and you know how rumors on the internet are. They're all true, of course. But the rumor started going around the internet that the doll, which had been kept under lock and key, this is one of the things that the Warrens did whenever they were dispatched to investigate a item or something that was supposedly haunted or possessed or whatever. They would take that item and they would put it into a museum or an area of their home which was kept under lock and key because they wanted to prevent these things from being out in the world. Ed believed that if the more he could remove these things, the better off and safer the rest of the world would be. Well, that's what they did with this thing. They put it into a case that was surrounded by all these, I'll say bubbles, but these things that were supposed to contain the entity that was inside the doll. So it was in this glass case. And I think that at one point it was moved from their home to a museum that they were operating. But nevertheless, rumor got around this week that the doll was gone, that the doll got out. And people were just like, well, that's just what we fucking need is a murderous doll on the loose. That's just going to put the cap on 2020. Let's just go ahead and get Chucky out here while we're at it. With Chucky and Annabelle, that's our new power couple for 2020. And it of course, it's one of these things where it sounds too rich to be true. And of course it was, because what happened was somebody edited the Annabelle Wikipedia page to say, it got out on X date. And independently, people have to try and verify, is it still in containment? Is it out? Do we need to be concerned? And it was, of course, determined that the thing never was in any type of release state or whatnot. It was under lock and key the whole time. So, again, 2020, just plain balls out nuts. We got a couple of months left here. We got an election to get through, and I know it's going to be even weirder around that stuff. So just keep your heads down, folks. Put on your flak jacket. Make sure you got plenty of plates in there like you would on Warzone. And just make sure you're ready to go, because there's going to be some even weirder stuff. I can sense it in my bones. And there's going to be some weird shit between here and the end of 2020. We're building towards something. The crescendo has not been played yet, but it's coming. Trust me, it's coming. Let's take a little break, get a little music going here, and we'll come back and we'll talk about something much more positive, at least in my opinion, in terms of how we've got a savior having come for a football league that we thought was dead. Be back in a moment.
We'll
welcome back, gang. Thank you for continuing to hang out with us here on the Weekly Trim as part of the Rasslin Redbeard YouTube channel. If you haven't already, we would ask that you please consider subscribing if you enjoy the program. If you want to hit that little bell icon on there, you'll be notified of whenever we've uploaded something new to the channel. And also, if you like us on Spotify or Anchor.fm or any of the affiliate sites that we're also part of now, make sure that you join and connect with us on those platforms as well. You'll be notified whenever we upload something new, and that is an ideal scenario for you as a fan of what we're doing here on the old Weekly Trim with yours, Beardly Redbeard. Now, I was really dejected here a little bit earlier in the year when not only did the, we'll say, relaunch season of the XFL got cut short, but then when the league went tits up and went bankrupt, I was very sad. I will be totally honest with you, because really and truly, while the XFL, it was not perfect. There were a lot of things in that league in terms of the quality of players and in terms of just, the on-field product. It wasn't quite up to par with the NFL. I would dare say probably not even the Canadian Football League. But, there were a lot of things that worked and that were doing and that were going well with the XFL. So when the season ended because of COVID, it was like, well, okay, well, hopefully they'll be back here next year. Then it was like, well, we didn't make the kind of money we were going to. So in typical wrestling promoter fashion, Vince McMahon, of course, was the owner of the XFL, kind of looked at everybody and said, oh, well, we didn't draw what we thought we were going to. Gate was a little light today, so we're going to close. And the company went bankrupt. And it was like, what? No, you had TV. You had advertisers. You had media deals. This was all going well. The ratings were good. You had a team, like, I'll be honest in saying that when they started to get everything going with the XFL, I looked at the teams that were out there, and I'm like, okay, well, we got to pick one of these to support. And you had teams that were kind of in the southeast and whatnot, but they didn't really vibe with me, because you had the Tampa Bay Vipers, for example, and then there wasn't anything in the Carolinas. There wasn't even one in Georgia. But you had, teams that were in this area. And I looked at them and I'm like, because some people were pulling for like the Guardians or one of the teams in Texas out there. I was like, well, you know what? I kind of like that team. And it was the St. Louis Battlehawks. And why did I like that team? Because I was a huge fan of a cartoon growing up called the Silverhawks. And the logo for the Battlehawks reminded me of the Silverhawks. So in my mind, I'm like, well, there we go. There's your natural selection right there. Well, not natural selection. That'd be a totally different thing. But there's your natural choice. The Battlehawks. So I became a big fan of the Battlehawks. I've got a hat, got some stuff there. And I was like, this is great. I've got a new team I can support from the ground up, and we're just going to take off with this thing. And it was even better because of the fact that the St. Louis people, the folks there in that town, absolutely went nuts over this team. They were supporting it. They were coming out in droves to see the games, and they really were showing that they wanted football, because they're one of the towns that has really been deprived over the years, because they had the St. Louis Rams at one point in time, and now nothing. The Rams, of course, are one of the teams that are out west at this point in time. And, they clearly have a desire for football in St. Louis by virtue of how the fan base responded. The team responded, I think, to the fan base as well, because they were playing some great ball. And, I said here earlier, the quality of player was not quite as high in the XFL as what you would get in an NFL squad, but these were still top-notch athletes. These were all, Division I college football players at one point in time. So there was talent on the field, and St. Louis had a lot of talent. They had kind of that air raid style offense where it was a lot of, just sling it down the field style passes and what have you. Very bold offense, good defense, not anything that was tremendously flashy on that side of the ball, but it was a quality team. And again, the fan base ate it up. I interacted a lot with the social media teams on there, and it was a lot of fun to watch these things. And I've had friends, I've had a couple of buddies who went to some of the games, like up in Washington and what have you. The beer snakes up there, where you had like, it's just it's an example of people having fun while they're at a game. But the beer snake was literally a snake people formed in the crowd with their empty beer cups. And these things became epic. They looked like 30, 40 feet long. All these beer cups forming a snake in the crowd. It was amazing. And again, it's just, it was a part of the culture of the league that made it fun. And when it went away, it was like, just a kick in the nuts, It's like, man, we had fun there. We were really enjoying ourselves. And it seemed really like this. All right, this is it, because they're gone. This was their second chance, because the XFL started. I don't remember when the original iteration was. It had to be more than 10 years ago, I want to say, when the original XFL debuted. But this version here, when it failed, it was like, they're not going to get a third chance. This is just dumb at this point in time. But then there was a little glimmer of hope, a tiny little ember of fire caught the flame. As in came the Rock with his big bags of cash, swinging around like two massive you-know-whats to save the day. Him and his investors snatched this thing from the jaws of bankruptcy. And it was an amazing scenario, because I and a lot of people who follow the XFL were kind of under the impression that after it went to bankruptcy, McMahon was going to try and buy it back. I think he had kind of said and insinuated that he was interested in doing that, but it was like, please don't let him have it back. Please, no. He's already fumbled that ball twice now. So when the news rolled out here a couple of weeks ago that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and a group of investors were involved in buying the XFL, it was like, are you serious? We can have the XFL again? Because I thought it was dead. I thought for sure, this is just dead, doornail dead, excuse me. We're never going to see this again. It was pointless to ever think that we could have an alternative football league in this country. But now there's hope, because of the fact that The Rock and his investors and his big bags of cash can come along through here and save the XFL for not a whole lot of money. I mean, it was only $15 million that it cost them to buy this league. And I'm like, $15 million? What is $15 million to The Rock? The Rock probably got that much for stepping foot onto one of those god-awful Fast and Furious movies. Just one of them. That might have been what he got for Rampage, or one of those movies that he did. So it's like, he's got this investment team that's with him. One of the members of the investment team happened to be his ex-wife, so that's kind of interesting. I guess they're still on good enough terms that, they engage their money accordingly, but whatever. But just to see what seemed like a meager amount of money required to purchase a professional sports league, like an entire league, was really amazing. So I'm like, well, gosh, the fans could have maybe pulled a whole bunch of money and done something like that. Patreon? Oh, you can do some wonders on Patreon and whatever those other crowdsourcing platforms are. But they've done it. They've purchased the XFL and given hope to a lot of people in the process. There's not been any news about what the outlook is as far as are they going to play in 2021? Are they going to sit on it for another year and make sure that all the COVID stuff has kind of died down? Nobody really knows at this point in time what their future outlook is, but for sure they're going to have football again at some point in time there, because The Rock, he's been very vocal on social media in saying that he's done this for the fans and for the passion of football. And it's one of those things where, as a media mogul and whatnot, is he blowing smoke up people's asses? Maybe, sure. But it's still one of those things where it seems very genuine, especially recovering from someone like him, because, he played football. He was a Division I athlete, played in Miami, tried to get in the NFL, wasn't quite good enough, did the whole journeyman thing up there in the Canadian Football League, and that led to his eventual progression into professional wrestling. But, it seems like it's on the right track here. It seems like we're doing good things in recovering the XFL. And what's more, by virtue of The Rock having all that he does in terms of associations with media partners, with other companies that could take advantage of this and be involved, it just seems like a really awesome scenario. Because, for example, he has a development deal for programming with NBC Universal. Of course, he does the Titan games on the NBC network at this point in time. If you don't watch that, I would encourage you to do so. It's a very entertaining show. Some really just nuts stuff they do on there in terms of the physical challenges. But, he has the Titan games, and he's got, again, a development contract with them to create more programming. Could that mean the XFL is bound for NBC? Maybe so. It'd be one more thing that the NBC network could do in terms of covering sports, which Lord knows they need something to fill some of those time slots that they have on Saturday and Sunday afternoons. But also, he has, of course, an association with a brand like Under Armour. And what athlete these days wouldn't want to go on the field wearing a kit designed by and made by a major outfitter like Under Armour? Yeah, it's a natural thing there, a natural association, and it's something that The Rock already sort of has in his back pocket, so he can say, all right, well, let's get some uniforms made here. And I'm sure they would do it immediately because, again, it's exposure for them. It's exposure for a company that will hopefully continue to grow now that it's in better hands management-wise. Will some things change? I'm sure that it will. I would like to see, a return to play. Of course, they won't continue the season that was. That season is gone, unfortunately. But I'm fairly confident that we'll have a new season sometime in the near future. I would think probably sometime in the spring of 2021. Probably maybe April, May, somewhere in there. I would expect to see the league kick off again. If not, maybe 2022. It may be, ideal for them to take another year here and say, okay, let's make sure we're good and organized. But, bottom line is, it's a great thing that this is going on. It has a huge upside in terms of what it can be because people clearly want football. People clearly are fans of what the XFL were doing because all the metrics, all the, the little statistics that they have these days out there were showing that people wanted this league to succeed. And, again, when it didn't, I think, a lot of people were very heartbroken, myself, again, being one of them. So hopefully this is going to be a real kick in the pants here towards getting something else going with a major football brand here in the United States. I think it's going to be a very cool thing. We're not sure of when it's going to happen. It definitely is going to happen, though. It's one of those things where we have to hold on to hope and wish for good things to come true in being football fans. Because, evidently we're maybe or maybe not going to have a college football season this year. The NFL seems to be on track to play, something resembling a season, but college football, that's kind of up in the air at this point in time. Hopefully they'll play. Maybe they won't have fans in the stands, but again, at least they'll have something out there. But hopefully we'll have some XFL football to watch here in the very near future. All thanks to our Savior, The Rock. Be back in a few here, folks. Going to take another break, and we'll return on this episode of the Weekly Trim. folks. Thank you for continuing to hang out with us here on the Rasslin with Redbeard YouTube channel. Thank you for being part of the Weekly Trim podcast here. Great things happening on the channel, as always. We're continuing to churn out the show here. We've been pretty regular in doing what we wanted to do for a long time with this podcast, and I'm pretty pleased with where we are right now. I've got some things that I want to do with the channel that we're not able to quite do right now because things aren't really returned to normal yet. But I'm hoping, that in the month of September and hopefully in October, that we'll start to see a little more normalcy coming around. I think that I'm really hopeful that the chances of some better things happening in those months is going to be there. I really think so. But we'll have to wait and see on those. Don't quote me on anything yet, but we've got some old irons in the fire, as they used to say. But right now, I want to talk about something that it landed on my radar here the past couple of days, and it was like, hey, what was the point of that? And I'm talking about a cover song. Cover songs. Let me say this before we get too much further. All the music that we play on the show, I always try and find cover tunes because I think cover songs are fun. I like cover tunes because being around bands in college and whatnot, you hear a lot of cover songs. You hear bands playing stuff that in some cases they really don't have any business playing. But I've heard tons of cover tunes because I've been to tons of shows where you have local bands who, of course, they want to play their own stuff, but then in order to get people to respond and to be, sort of at all into what they're doing, they've got to play some cover tunes. So I like cover songs. I like hearing bands put their spin on stuff, and it's just, it's very unique to hear some of the material that gets put out there because there are some very unique takes on songs. One of the ones that, and I can't remember the name of the band off the top of my head, but one of the cover tunes that I heard a long time ago that just really set me into being, into the mode of tracking down stuff of this nature was a cover of "You Are the Wind Beneath My Wings" it's a European power metal band. I can't think of the name of the band. Somebody, if you're listening to this and you know what I'm talking about, name who I'm talking about. It's not Hammerfall. It's not, one of those type bands. It was some other, gosh, I can't think of them off the top of my head. But anyway, I love cover tunes, and I incorporate them into the show because of the fact that I love cover tunes. Unfortunately, it yields in a lot of near copyright strikes because some of these things, they're obviously not the original version of these songs, but in a lot of scenarios, they're pretty close. Or, somebody will say, oh, I own the copyright to that, and it doesn't result in a copyright strike on YouTube, which would be terrible. It's just that in putting that in the video or in the audio on these things, they don't ding you. They just say, okay, well, we're going to put advertisements associated with your upload here that are going to kick towards the content holder that you've defrauded, apparently. Yeah, whatever. But be that as it may, I enjoy cover tunes. I put them on the show because of the fact that I enjoy cover tunes. And there was one released here within the past couple of days that just was like, what in the world were you guys even thinking? Because I will not pretend to pay attention to a lot of bands that I don't necessarily really care for anymore. Not that I was ever a huge fan. I will go ahead and say I'm talking about Nickelback. I paid to see Nickelback once, but it was not to see them. I wanted to see Jerry Cantrell, who of course was the guitarist for Alice in Chains, who was their main support on the tour at that point in time that they were on. I wanted to see Jerry Cantrell, and the only way I could do that was to pay to see Nickelback. So whatever, I saw Nickelback and gave them some of my money on that tour anyway. But Nickelback, they have all their detractors in the world because of the fact that, and this is my opinion, I shouldn't have said because of the fact, this is my opinion, that they have become so denigrated across the board by a lot of people because of the fact that they have just become very formulaic. in how they were, the cookie cutter for alt rock for a long time. And, that's not a bad thing. I had a friend of mine who was in a sign band. At one point, he told me, Rob, which Robert is my real name, if you didn't know that, shocker. He said, when you get into the music business, there are two types of bands or artists, whatever you want to say. Those who make art and those who make stuff to get paid. And what he was talking about there is marketable stuff, material, music, whatever, that will be not only successful in radio play, in play period, around whatever type of content consumption device you're talking about here, streaming material, radio, whatever. But you're talking about something that could potentially be marketed in terms of being bought by a TV show or a movie, in terms of licensing your material, because that is kind of a way to print money. That's why a band like Smash Mouth never really had to do much other than, hey now, you're a rock star, because that song has been licensed to hell and back. So that's one of the reasons why I think Nickelback has this, funk about them, and saying, ugh, it's Nickelback, because it's the same thing. It's going to be 3 minutes and 30 seconds to 3 minutes and 45 seconds of a very formulaic song that's going to hit all the right notes. It's going to make you feel nice and tight in the pants, and then it's going to be able to send you on your way with that good feeling there, because it was the same thing that they've done before that worked and that will continue to work until the end of time. It's just, music is kind of like that. So, you have that mentality that's shared by a lot of people about them. They have their fans. It's fine. If you like Nickelback, more power to you. I won't say that I hate them. I'm not going to, be one of these people that rails against them, although that's what this might sound like. I don't care. I don't listen to that kind of music typically. As I said, I paid to see a band that was on tour with them, not them. I think that should give you enough of an idea as to my mentality towards them. But, be that as it may, it landed on my radar here the past couple of days that they had turned in and published a cover of Charlie Daniels Band's Devil Went Down to Georgia. And in my mind, I'm like, well, yeah, that would be a tribute, a decent thing to do, because Charlie Daniels, unfortunately, here a little bit earlier in the year, did pass away. And you had a number of groups at that point in time turn in material that, were tributes to Charlie Daniels, because, he's been around forever. And it was a very epic personality in terms of country music and being one of the real final members of outlaw country. You have guys like him and Johnny Cash and Waylon Jennings, so many others that really contributed to where country music is now, but unfortunately you don't hear anything resembling them, or not much of it anyway. You got some guys who are doing some things that kind of resemble what the real actual country music sounds like, but not many. Country music these days sounds a little bit like alt rock used to, but whatever. And when I heard the song, I was like, well, you know what, I'll give it a chance, because, again, I'm a fan of covers. I think it's interesting when a band takes a piece of material and tries to make it their own. So I searched it out and gave it a couple of listens. I will say that I listened to it about I think it was between 6 and 10 times I listened to the song. And the resounding takeaway that I have from it is that it's not really a true cover. What I mean by that is they took some liberties with the song. They changed some of the lyrics. It's no longer about this little farm boy who just happens to run into the devil himself. It's about this kind of sleazy guitar player who encounters an even sleazier devil who wants to take his soul, but it's suddenly a guitar player. And the lyrics are different. The sound is different in terms of the context of the song. and it doesn't strike me as being a true cover. It's an you could call it an interpretation of The Devil Goes Down to Georgia. Because there have been so many other bands, not only in the realm of rock, but in other genres as well, who have taken that song and done a lot of great things with it. It's ironic that they put this out here now, because back whenever Charlie Daniels passed away, within a very short period of time, the new metal band Korn came out with their cover of Devil Went Down to Georgia, with the rapper Yellow Wolf involved there, and it was a fantastic version. They played it very true to the original, and it was very cool, because it's like, wow, Korn is playing a country song. And they didn't change much of it in terms of it, trying to make it theirs. They were, well, let me rephrase. They changed it, of course, to match their style of play and whatnot, their sound, but they didn't butcher it in terms of saying, all right, well, we're going to take the framework of this song and we're going to put this, and this in it to match what we want to do with it. They kept it pretty to themselves. Nickelback, they changed a lot, and I had a problem with that. And the more I listened to it, the more of a problem I had with it. It just, it really did not capture anything of the essence of the original song. It seemed very derivative, for one. It didn't seem to have any sort of passion to it in terms of it being a tribute to Charlie Daniels, which I don't think it is, because if it was, they would have turned it in long before now. Charlie Daniels has been dead for 3 or 4 months at this point in time. But in listening to it, it was just, it was very, again, derivative, which is one of the words that you hear often put beside their music. It's just not all that inspired. And, there were some guitar parts in there that people have said, oh, well, it's got an arpeggio in there, or however you say that word. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's kind of become the flavor of the day. And it's not something that is seen as being all that technically challenging anymore either. Because you got a lot of people who are doing that. And, it's a little like sort of the sweeping finger motions that you see on a lot of the speed metal guitar players and whatnot out there. It's one of those things where if you nail it right once in the studio, then you're fine. You only had to play it right one time in your entire life. So it's like, okay, whatever. That's fine. But it didn't sit well with me. The whole thing was just kind of weird. And then to top things off, I went and I found the video. They released a music video for this thing. And I'm not sure if they just didn't have much of a budget or what exactly was going on here. But the video looks literally like one of the old like shockwave flash animations that you would see on some cheap little humor site, like one of the the old the flash animations where like you can elf yourself, where you send it you send this thing a picture of yourself and it superimposes your face on one of the elves. That was the style of animation that's in this video. It's cheap. It looks bad, and it looked kind of gross too, because in the context of this song, you have a hero and a villain. Of course, you have kind of an anti-hero in the Johnny, the fiddle player, because he's very bold in saying, I'm the best it's ever been, you son of a bitch, that kind of thing. But he just, it's like a David and Goliath type scenario, which is something that people don't, if you've never read the biblical story of David and Goliath, read it sometime. David dressed down Goliath in a way that would have made some wrestler promos just look cheap. It's a great little thing in there. You go read that part of the Bible. People have issues with trying to read scripture anymore, but really truly read that. It's worth your time, because you'll see what I'm talking about in terms of there being a defined hero and villain in the story of this song. In the Nickelback version, you have kind of a sleazeball versus a sleazeball. And really and truly, with the design of the quote-unquote hero, he looks more villainous and kind of grungy than the devil does in this thing. And it's very weird the way the whole thing is put together. And, in talking about videos related to this song and covers, Primus, Les Claypool, epic bass player, very eccentric and whatnot. But if you want to see a really well done and a really cool video and a cool take on Charlie Daniels' band Devil Went Down to Georgia, theirs is awesome. And in terms of the look of the Nickelback video, again, it just seemed cheap. It seemed very poorly done. It seemed haphazardly done, put it that way. So, in coming away from it, it was like there's no redeeming quality to this whatsoever. So I even made a post on my personal Facebook page where I was like, Tenacious D's tribute is greater than Korn's version of this song, is greater than a whole bunch of other covers, is greater than Nickelback's. Because Tenacious D, the song Tribute, is, if you've never seen it, you need to check it out. If you've not seen Tenacious D's tribute video by this point in time, you're just a loser. I'm sorry. But Tenacious D's tribute, again, is a scenario where Tenacious D, Jack Black, Kyle Gass, they encounter a demon, which is a very similar story in the song, or in the context of the song, to what goes on in Devil Went Down to Georgia. The difference being that it's just a demon and not actually Satan. And the video is awesome because of the fact that Dave Grohl from Nirvana and the Foo Fighters plays the demon. So you've got, the addition of him being in there as well. Very cool thing, very awesome video, very neat song. To me, in the realm of things, I know it's not on a cover of Devil Went Down to Georgia, but it's close enough to where it's still sort of on top of the pile. Korn's version, definitely better than Nickelback's. And Nickelback's is definitely below a whole bunch of other covers of this song. I'm sorry if you're a Nickelback fan and you're listening to this, but yeah, that was a very, very poor decision on their part to release this song. I don't know what other material they have out there at this point in time. I haven't heard, again, I don't follow them, so I can't tell you, they had the top single of 2019 or whatever, because I don't care. I don't really give a rat's patoot about Nickelback. They were popular when I was in college, and that's been 20 years ago now. Come on. Somebody else has got to be out there at this point in time. But that's my take on their cover of Charlie Daniels Band and Devil Went Down to Georgia. Lots of good covers out there. We've shared covers of Devil Went Down to Georgia on this show that are very good. You're never going to hear Nickelback's on this show for good reason. So it is what it is. And what it is now is time to take another break before we get to the final segment of the show, where I get to have a beverage. I got something kind of cool here this week as well. We've been on a roll here. We had, the really gross Clamato drink there a couple of weeks ago, and we've been on the upswing ever since then. So we're going to see if we continue that here this week as we get ready to wrap up the program with our final segment. Going to take a break, listen to some more tunes, a better cover song than what I've been talking about here, and we'll be back with What's Redbeard Drinking. Stay tuned, folks.
Turn around, look at what you see. In a face, the mirror of your dreams. Make believe and everywhere, giving in the
Welcome back, gang. We are at that point in the program where my parched throat gets some relief. And Lord knows after recording for an hour, I need some relief in the form of a nice cold beverage. And we got something interesting here. Something that I will admit to having seen on the shelves for a while. I think this has been around since about March of this year, so I'm just now getting a chance to sample this. We have a unique offering, at least I'll call it a unique offering, from Budweiser. This is Budweiser's Nitro Reserve Gold. And on the can here, it says this is a extra smooth golden lager. And not much else on the can here. We do have some other stuff that's associated with this beer, but I want to read the description that we have from brewbound.com of what this particular beverage is. Budweiser Nitro Gold is a new, alluring golden lager brewed with nitro being nitrogen, with notes of toasted caramel malt for a bold, flavorful taste, and is available in 12-ounce cans nationwide. Budweiser Nitro offers a lush finish and a 5% ABV that is silky smooth thanks to the smaller and denser bubbles, providing an overall rich, captivating taste. Yeah, that's, the descriptions of these things are always fun to me because, it's like they put all these descriptions about it being with caramel notes and this, that, and the other. Here's my take on some things. A lager, you're going to get a lot of flavor options in there. You will really never see me picking up an IPA because to me, IPAs all taste like grass clippings. Or at least the way grass clippings smell, anyway. So I don't like IPAs. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people enjoy them. I don't. It's just all the hops. That's not my thing. But this is different even than those in terms of offering something different from a gimmick perspective, in that it's got some instructions for how to actually dispense this thing. And forever people have known, don't shake up a can of beer and then open it. Otherwise, you'll be wearing fizz forever. Well, this actually has instructions. I don't know. I'm not sure if you're supposed to drink this straight from the can. But, we're going to do as it says. On the packaging, which this came in a box, unlike most 6-packs, this came in a cube sort of arrangement there. But even on that and also on the can, it's got a set of instructions for how to operate this thing. And it says literally to flip the can 3 times. So, okay, that's one thing that we'll be doing differently than when we typically open a beer. And the next thing on there says, open and pour hard. So, yeah, full send. Send it. Don't lollygag around with this thing, because it on the image here on the can, it literally has the can being held vertically. Not, where you're trying to get a decent head on here or whatnot. It says, pour this sucker straight out. So, and then it says wait for it. So I'm assuming that once we've dispensed this, that it will settle in some way, shape, or form, and we'll have something to drink. So we're going to try this. I'm going to admit to holding this a little bit back from my equipment here because Lord knows I don't want this thing to spew everywhere after we've given it the 3 rotations that are required in order to enjoy this thing. So here we go. We're going to 2, 3. I'm going to do it one more time just for the sake of doing it there. And we're going to crack this thing open here now. Yep, it didn't spew. And full send. Pour. Wow. Okay. Well, wow, that's crazy. Wow. Okay. Well, that's, I'm sitting here sort of flabbergasted at this thing because normally, like, you would never pour a beer as I just poured this one here. You would never think of just slamming a beer into a glass the way I did this one here. But wow, it's got a very nice head forming on this beer despite the fact that it was poured as violently as possible. The nitrogen, I guess, really does make a difference in terms of the formation of the carbonation in this thing. Wow. And it really has, it's settled beautifully. I have to say, this is a great looking beer here. I'm looking at my glass, and we have about an inch of head here on top of this, and the color is very much like what you would expect in lager. It's got a nice, almost black tea brown shade there through the glass, and it looks great. This looks like a very well poured beer, like what you would expect to get at a tap room or a public house somewhere. I am very impressed with how this has evolved. Wow. I would never have thought this would have come out that well. And it's maintaining itself too in terms of the head here as I'm looking at it. It's not receding at all. Wow. Technology in beer. Look at this. All right, let's put it to the nose here and see what we can pick up on in terms of any sort of aromatic notes. Very yeasty, very much has that sort of bread kind of smell to it. That's one of the things that people you don't necessarily want to say beer smells like bread, but it does to me because I think of like a sourdough bread when I smell a beer of this nature, which is not bad because I like sourdough bread. This is a good aroma in my opinion, but it's got that sense of bitterness in there. Seems very clean, very obviously very much a good bold, I'll say, flavor to this or aroma because this is not as pale in terms of like a traditional Budweiser. This appears to be a little bit more closely resembling. It's not, it's not a Sam Adams in terms of the color, but it's between a Sam Adams and a traditional lager like a Yingling, for example. This is probably closer to like I think Yingling had an American Gold or something like that they produced. I forget what that one was called, but it came out earlier this year as well. Very very close in color to that. Got the caramel notes in there as well, but mostly you have that sort of yeastiness to it that is very common amongst lagers. So yeah, this is really impressing me. The head continues to maintain itself. All right, let's get down to business. Let's enjoy some Nitro Reserve Gold from Budweiser. Here we go. That's very unique. It has kind of a creamy mouthfeel. There's not a whole lot of texture there, but there is a little more body to this than a traditional, like a Budweiser, for the sake of discussion here. The flavor is, I'll say, oddly sweet. There's not a whole lot of aftertaste to this either. It's very clean, very crisp in terms of the experience. It was a lot of fun in terms of getting the lip into this because you had to dive through the head on this, and the head continues to maintain itself. And that's one of those things when I drink a beer, a head-on beer really, to me, is part of it because in piercing the head with your lip and getting down into it, you have that emotional connection to this thing, and you have that moment where your olfactory senses and your taste buds meet in the middle by virtue of having cracked the seal that is the head on the beer. I know that's one of my real flowery descriptions of something like this, but really and truly, enjoying a beer can be more than just pounding the thing down. And that's what something like this is intended to be, an actual experience, and not just, let me see how quickly I can get through 6 of these things to get nice and tanked. Because with this, you really couldn't, because you're supposed to pour it properly and not just, drain these things out of a can. Wow, that's impressive. I'm going to go back in for another taste here, see what we can do to bring out any other flavor notes here. Very easy to drink. I will say this. While there is plenty of flavor to this, it doesn't have so much flavor that it is imposing, or that the flavor is really all that prevalent. So I don't know if maybe this is an older can. I'm not sure what the date on this is. I need to go find out how long this has actually been on the shelves here now. But there's not it's not a pungent beer. You think of things like Sam Adams and other beers that are American lagers that are brown and whatnot, like this one is, in terms of having more flavor. This one doesn't have a whole lot. I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad by any stretch of the imagination. Very easy to drink. I would say this may even be easier to drink than a traditional Budweiser in terms of just being a kind of a plain beverage. I know that's a weird way of describing a beer, but there's not a whole lot going on here in terms of the flavor profile. At least not that I'm picking up anyway. It's got, like it describes, it's got that sweetness, it's got the caramel notes in there, but there's not a whole lot else going for this one. It's not bad. This, again, I'm going to enjoy this one, and I'm probably going to have 3 or 4 more just because I've got them. But is this something that I would reach for again immediately? Probably not. Just, it's one of those things where with the fact that you have to pour this a certain way, and it's kind of a gimmick in terms of the nitrogen. I don't know if that's changed some of the flavor profile in here as well. It just, it's one of these things where Budweiser seemed to say, okay, well, we can do this. Let's try it and see how it's received. And, it is what it is. This was $9 for a 6-pack. A little bit high, in terms of what we've got here. Again, I'm going to drink these and I'm going to enjoy them. Will it be something that I ever reach for again? Definitely not. I would not seek this out. I would much sooner reach for, a traditional Sam Adams or something else along these lines if I wanted something that tasted and looked like this. Which again, the head, the nitrogen apparently is doing great things in terms of maintaining the head on this because it really hasn't gone down much at all, and I've drank about half of the original contents of the can at this point in time. But overall, the 5% ABV, that's a good, 0.8% or so more than a typical Budweiser offering. Doesn't have, a real pungent alcohol taste to it. Again, this is a crisp, clean, really sweet almost beer in terms of the way it comes across. That yeastiness is still prevalent there. Aftertaste is very minimal. So, this is something that if you wanted to pair it with a meal or something like that, it would be an ideal thing to put out there. It's not going to clash with anything you might be serving. So this could be put with anything almost. It's got that almost sort of white wine aspect of things in that it can be with whatever, So not bad, not great. On a scale of 1 to 5, I give it about a 2.5. It's middle of the road. It is what it is. It's something to drink. It's cold. It's going to be enjoyable. It's going to give you a little bit of a buzz. So, hey, good on you, Budweiser. You made something that was unique there, something that can definitely be enjoyed, and that's a decent entry into the lager field of beers that's out there in 2020. So there you go. That's our taste and impression of Budweiser Nitro Reserve Gold. So we appreciate you guys tuning in to the program this week. Thank you for being a part of all we're doing here on the Rasslin Redbeard YouTube channel. Please remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that stuff that we're supposed to beg you as YouTubers to do so that you can be a part of the community and so that you can know whenever we have uploaded new content. Appreciate you folks tuning in. And as always, we'll see you further on up the road.